today's new show is starting off with a very special bit, and we're going off the norm, off the beaten track that we usually take on the Sika Stand News show. And we always start with weightlifting, but today we're starting with one of the biggest squats I've seen in a while, certainly one of the most impressive squats I've seen in a while, and that is Nicholas Dupree's 405 kilos, 405 kilos for a set of 3. Now, Nicholas weighs about 120 to 125 kilos, and he's squatting 405 for a set of 3. This has got to be one of the most impressive set of squats in a long time. This is ludicrous. So 405 competition Alico plates, 405 kilos for a set of 3 in flats, Vivos by the looks of things, knee wraps, and a good old lever belt. So let's have a look. 405. Nicholas is, of course, South African. He is certainly one of South Africa's strongest men, but arguably one of the strongest people in the world lifting weights right now. 405 for 3. Incredibly casual. Said he lost his balance a little bit on the second rep and then came back for it on the third and absolutely blew it out of the water. I just don't even know what to say about this because I'm so impressed by this. It's so good to see people pushing the limits. Aren't people just fucking great? This is what I love about the new show, is how fantastic people are and how far people push themselves and the things they do with their bodies. I think it's just fucking amazing, and I love doing new shows like this when there's just super crazy stuff, because it's what we're all about at Sika Strength, is pushing people's performance as much as possible in whatever parameters they're trying to push, and 405 for set of 3 is something that is incredible. So shout out to Nicholas, and very excited. Apparently, I think someone said that he's competing in the ABS Pro this year. Did someone say that? Did someone say that in the comments? So that's a competition in Dublin, quite a big competition in the Abs gym in Dublin. I've never been, because powerlifting competitions are very loud. There's a lot of fireworks and music, and I don't know if I'd really enjoy that much, but if he is, that'd be very interesting to see. But 405 for 3, fucking ludicrous. Now on with the weightlifting section. We've got Lee Sang, who hit a squat PB, 260 kilos. So Lee Sang is a 67 kilo weightlifter. I think he said he's weighing about 73 kilos at the moment. Had the fortunate of being in this training center a couple of weeks ago when we were in Korea, and we have a longer video coming on that because we got to see the international team. Pretty much the whole team was in session, both the male and the female were there. All the big names were there, and they were doing a heavy session, so there's a lot of stuff to talk on that, and we're very excited to bring that one because there's a lot of pretty interesting nuances with that. So he hit his previous best, 255, and he smashed his 260. Lee is, of course, a very popular weightlifter, not only because he's incredibly good at weightlifting, but also because he is shredded and jacked. So the lighting, of course, in the Korean National Training Hall does Lee wonders for his angles and his videos, and he is absolutely shredded, and he appears to be this thick skin shredded in real life from what I've seen. So kudos to Lee. And he didn't stop there. He also hit a 260 kilo deadlift. Now, his body weight was 71 here, so actually a little bit lighter than the 73, which is incredible. So he's hitting this 260, kind of a clean deadlift, more than a traditional deadlift, of course. Lee favours a lot of heavy squats, high volume pulls, and we saw him do a lot of that in training. And it's not the traditional way they train at the Korean Centre, it's kind of how he trains himself. Now, of course, he's doing a little bit of a shrug, a little bit of tension in his arms at the top of the clean deadlift to make it more applicable. And he is smashing through these heavy sets of clean deadlifts. So we're at 230 here. And the vascularity in the shoulders and pecs is absolutely ludicrous. The Korean team do a whole lot of volume all throughout the year by the looks of things. So they keep that conditioning high, keep themselves in good shape, keep themselves as resilient as possible. And this 260 was very, very clean. Potentially might have been 265 or 270 there if you wanted it. So it'll be very impressive or very interesting to see how he pushes that, or if he'll push it further, or if he'll switch to some more focus on the snatch and clean and jerk with the Worlds coming up in a couple of weeks. Next, we've got Lasha, the man, the myth, the legend, doing some snatch complexes at 200 kilos. So that snatch pull where he doesn't fully extend, where he keeps his shoulders and chest over the barbell and goes about halfway up in the second pull, or a little bit further up than that even, and then follows it with a full snatch. And he does a couple of sets, 3 sets at 200 kilos. And I've got to say, these are looking very spicy. These look as fast as we've ever seen Lasha. I don't think we'll ever see anyone move 200 like this for a very, very long time. This is a great indicator if he's in this good a shape this far out from Worlds, which are on in Saudi Arabia this year, I believe. So fantastic to see Lasha moving like this. And Lasha really rocks the boat, and not only in the fact that the weights he lifts rock the boat in terms of no one's ever done those weights, but also in the fact that Lasha moves incredibly well. His snatch technique, of course, given that he's snatched so far above anyone else, is fantastic. Probably worth a deeper video at some stage, but he's an incredible mover in the snatch. Now, sticking with Lasha, he is squatting 305 kilos for a double, and of course we never see. Lasha is almost notorious for the fact that he never pushes his squats in any major fashion, so we see him always squatting heavy in absolute terms, but relative to him they're quite light, and we never see him really going beyond that 330 kilo mark for repetitions. Of course, we've seen other supers like Tank Murakami squatting 350 for doubles. We've seen Martsim squatted 400 kilos. We never see Lasha really pushing much beyond that, and of course Lasha decimates everyone in the snatch and clean and jerk numbers. The only rival we see with the clean and jerk really was Alexei Lovchev, who squats, I think Lovchev's best squat is 350, and of course he had the world record for a short time, the senior world record in clean and jerk back in 2015. But other than that, we don't see anyone matching Lasha for lifts, even though they might technically outsquat him in their working weights. But Lasha, of course, probably coming up to his last Olympics, I would think. Not physically, but probably, I think, given some other factor, that likely he might retire after this. Now, here's an interesting little tidbit. We have a teenage lifter, Sehiga, clean and jerking 101 at 59 in flat shoes. Now, what's very interesting about this is I was talking to We Lift Weights when we were in Japan. Of course, I was talking to him. We were with him for 2 weeks. But we were talking about this specific subject, and he mentioned that her coach has all his athletes lifting in flat shoes, and they come from a particular island in Japan, and I can't remember the name of the island. Now, a lot of the other coaches in the Japanese team don't agree with him using flat shoes. Of course, weightlifting shoes are, without a question, more useful for weightlifting for a variety of reasons, which we don't need to get into here. But it is interesting that it is something he thinks is very, very useful. And I would just thought it was quite an interesting tidbit on this if anyone does watch this, because I know a few of you probably have seen this, and actually someone has tagged us in this for the new show, is a fact that a lot of these other athletes do lift in these kind of barefoot shoes or just minimalist shoes. Now, I can't remember what the name of these particular style of Japanese shoes are. There's a particular name for them, but I don't have it at hand. But all these other athletes lift like this. And it'd be interesting to see if she did switch over. Either way, 101 at 59 as a teenager is incredible and technically very, very sharp. Great bottom position and a beautiful power jerk. And we don't see a lot of Japanese lifters power jerking as well, so even further interesting from that. And on top of that, we don't see a lot of female athletes power jerking. Sometimes we do see the squat jerk, of course, but the power jerk does not feature hugely. Here's a little blast from the past, the bull complex from Vasiliy with a 320 kilo back squat, dumps it and straight into a deadlift. Vasiliy, of course, this synonymous with being a fucking horse, just a ludicrous horse. So tips it over his head and straight and then into a deadlift, and literally straight into it. He wasted no time. Squatting 320 kilos, of course, by itself is absolutely incredible, and then deadlifting it straight after is someone who is just a madman when it comes to lifting weights. Vasiliy still living in New York from what I believe and coaching weightlifting, so hopefully he's getting on well. Now, here we've got Andrei Squatting, one of my favorite lifters ever, arguably one of the most talented weightlifters of not only our generation, but of every generation that we've ever had of weightlifters, in terms of what he did, but what he probably could have done. And if we look at his training numbers, and we've some of those training numbers on video, Andrei is a phenomenal athlete. He's back squatting 270 kilos by 3. Now, he didn't get selected for the national team. The Belarusian national team is quite solid at the moment. Not as good as they have been before, but they do have quite a few younger lifters knocking about, and they are sending those to Worlds. Apparently the decision isn't final just yet, and Andrei might have a chance at making Worlds. Andrei, of course, has had a tumultuous relationship with weightlifting. Very, very nice dude. I've talked to him a couple of times, and he comes across incredibly pleasant. Since Beijing, where he won his gold medals, and he's obviously multiple world championships before that, senior and junior, multiple world records, multiple Olympic records, multiple junior world records. He kind of fell off the bandwagon a little bit and never got that momentum going again from when he was in the 2006, 2007, 2008 competitions that he was doing, where he was decimating the competition. And we just never saw him kind of get back on track. Now, the last few years he's been on and off a little bit. And then we saw with COVID, he said this himself, he gained a little bit of extra weight and hasn't really kind of slimmed down to his prime shape. The interesting thing is, he gets back into shape so quickly. Like, seems to be back repping 270 after something like 2 months by the looks of things. We saw him last year. He was in Brazil when I was talking to him, and he was doing like a front squat and jerk with 220 kilos, snatch balancing like 200 kilos. Frighteningly talented. I assume Belarus don't have that same power with the drug testing, etc., but I'm rooting for Andrei, and I hope he gets back in the team, and hopefully we'll see, we saw him get back into the prep for the 2019 World Championships. He snatched 205 from low blocks. So what a man, what a lifter. Now, here we've got a guy known as Dr. Sprint UK, and he is a sprinter from Japan. And what was really interesting about his lifts was they are technically incredibly nice with some hang power cleans. So 125 kilos for a triple. And there is, if I had one of my athletes doing this, if they were a sprinter or any kind of athlete doing this, who's doing hang power cleans like this quality technique, I would be thrilled. The amount of traps involved, he's pulling himself under, he's moving his feet really fast, and he's catching them in a nice shallow squat, but also catching them with a nice even kind of under hip width catch stance. Oh, whew! Man, if one of my athletes did this technique, is so, but I love it. Now, he's not an amazing sprinter. He's a very, very good sprinter by the looks of things, but not world class. But it's a fact that these power cleans, and he's an athlete, just really made me want to include this in the show. So incredible work, and it's hilarious to see someone commenting on his style or his technique, because it is perfect. I'd change very, very little with this realistically if he was one of my athletes. Now here we have Azamat Dowlebekov, who is a Kazakhstan wrestler, and here he is fucking gunning up this hill in Kazakhstan. I've had the fortune, of course, to have been to Kazakhstan, and it is a beautiful country, and this kind of alpine territory is so impressive. The fact that he has no reduction in speed running up this hill, I just had to include it. Wrestlers take training to a different level. They take their actual training sessions or S&C to some crazy levels. Weightlifting, incredibly hard sport, absolutely, but the intensity that wrestlers bring to sessions is crazy. It's up there with rowers, it's kind of up there with swimmers. Just that work capacity in all their training sessions. To be in good shape requires their peak shape to be in this super high intense shape. Fortunately in weightlifting, once you're peaking, you're kind of in a better stage. It's more of a mental battle and staying fresher. But wrestlers bring a whole nother level of intensity when it comes to this. And I myself was doing hill sprints. I was pushing a buggy this morning, but I was not maintaining this same level of speed. And no, I love to see it. I love watching wrestlers. We have a wrestler video coming later this week on one of the Korean wrestlers. Some very good training footage of him. But Azamat taking it to another level in terms of intensity here with the hill sprints. Now we have just Fernando Arias doing just a good old-fashioned conventional deadlift at 420 kilos. And I just really like this deadlift, the quality of technique. It's conventional, it's super smooth, nice and clean rep. I just felt it really deserved a mention. We're keeping that train of over 400 kilo deadlifts rolling on the new show every week. And you know, when you people like Mega Gojira commenting, saying establishing dominance, Jesus Oliveira is complimenting you, you know you're doing a pretty good deal. You know you're doing something right. So this 420 kilo deadlift is very, very nice. Very impressed by this deadlift. Nice and clean. I just love seeing a good, honest to God, conventional deadlift. Finally, to finish off the show, we've got everybody's favourite, and I know a lot of you guys love Mitchell, so that's why I'm bringing this in, is Mitchell Hooper with a very clean 420 kilo muscle up, bar muscle up, no chicken wing, very smooth kip. After 100 attempts, I might be able to claim I'm the heaviest man. I feel like there's probably someone heavier. There's definitely one of those kind of bar stars dudes who's weighed like 1,000,000 kilos doing this. So I'm not sure what weight Mitchell is right now, but a fine set of quads in him. I mentioned this before, but we actually did Mitchell a disservice, I think, because subsequently, and I talked about this, and I know some other people commented, when he did the Tom Platz challenge, Tom Platz was actually wearing, it's not quite a single ply suit, but it certainly was a squat suit, and I think that does kind of change it a little bit, not to bring up that old debate again. But Mitchell just demonstrating himself as being a very talented all-around athlete. Now, one thing I will say is it's funny, people will comment sometimes on this, and they'll say Mitchell could, you know, take over weightlifting or whatever, and that's definitely not the case. I think he could probably be a very solid weightlifter, but not that he's ever said anything like that, by the way. But certainly one of the heaviest muscle ups, and clearly a very talented athlete. So when you think of kind of like athletic potential or athletic capacity, he is just someone who is he's just got that raw talent or that knack for things. Looking at him do stuff like this, and you know, he's not the biggest person at World's Strongest Man, but he is obviously the current world's strongest man, and he has got that it or that X factor. So I love a bit of Mitchell, and I think a lot of people like him. A very, very, very impressive athlete. Now, just to finish off the new show, not much on the combat sports section over the last few weeks, but I do want to finish off on the combat sports section with Don Frye, just a little compilation of him talking absolute schmack. You know, one of the most Americans ever, and I think everyone loves a bit of Don Frye.
Don Frye, the Predator, the UFC's two-time world champion. Back when men were men, not pretty boy champions who dye their hair and, God sake, paint their toenails. We'd fight all night long. There are no rules, no weight limits, and no time limits. Tournament fighting. Your reward for winning a fight would be to come back 20 minutes later and fight again. At the end of the night, you can go to the hospital, or you go to the after party, or if you're tough enough, both.
No, I love it. There's something about people like Don Frye who are, I suppose, unapologetically themselves, and a lot of times Americans are that, but not always to everyone's great taste. But when it comes to Don Frye, I think everyone can appreciate the character. So I hope you appreciated that. Hope you enjoyed today's new show. I promise you, Fitz will be back next week. If you could drop a like on this just to show your support for me, and just say, oh, thank God Owen's putting in the work and he's not gone fishing, and just show the Fitz that, of course, that I am the better host. And if you leave likes, it makes a huge difference to the algorithm, or so we all believe as YouTube creators. So if you just press like, that would mean a lot, and it would also just give a big fuck you to Fitz, because, you know, yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. Today's new show was brought to you by Sika Sleep. This is our current sleep formulation. It's our supplement, and it contains some of the most important micronutrients you need for your sleep. So you can get it in a box of 30 sachets. It's a lemon and lime flavor. It tastes great. Take it before you go to bed, and you'll have a great night's sleep, which is incredibly important for your life and your performance.